All right, folks, this is called the Amiga. This is essentially a copy of the Amiga 1200 PCB. This is done by Chucky, John Hartle, who traced all this. And I decided for 2023 to try and build it myself. This is going to be a very slow build. I'm going to take my time. I have very, very little experience with SMD stuff. So I thought it'll be a trial by fire trying to build this thing. Luckily, Chucky's provided on his blog, website, page, whatever it is, a very thorough and handy guide in about 5 parts on how to build this and how to step-by-step test and troubleshoot this. So we're going to follow that and hopefully get some result. The cool thing about the guide, and if you want to take on this project, I recommend reading the guide first, is that it goes through what you should really solder first, how to test those afterwards, putting on the power rails and all that kind of stuff. You can actually do some testing that you've done the right thing. So you're not just spending hours and hours just putting stuff together and then trying to figure out what went wrong, because things will go wrong. So this is Chucky's page here. Chucky is one of the guys that build Terrible Fire cards for the Amiga. There's some revision to the board. This is revision 1.5. In fact, this was sent to me by Chucky and Terrible Fire. They actually sent me an entire Amiga 1200 a while back. I didn't document this on the channel at the time because, I don't know, it felt weird to sort of show off. Anyway, so we're going to follow the guide. So the guide essentially starts by advising you, telling you to put every resistors and capacitors first. Not the diodes, nothing like that. Just focus first on the resistors and capacitors. Get those little small passives out of the way. Chucky has a very, very handy, amazing PCB locator here. Sorry, fit to window. Component locator for the PCB. So essentially you just select what type of component, capacitors, resistors, which value, and it'll tell you on the top and bottom layer where they go. You can see them highlighted in red. That's super handy. It'll save me so much time already, because time is essentially going to be the factor here. And anyway, let's get started. Let's do it. Let's do it. Don't stall. Stop stalling. Be the worst thing to do. All right. So I'm about 100 components in. I did that in a day. This was sort of my practice run to see what it feels like. So yeah, I've about 100, and it looks like I have nothing on this board. You can see the little bumps here, but it actually, there's it's not much on it. There's a lot here. And what first impression is actually, dare I say, it's easier and less messy than True Hole, especially for resistors and capacitors. You don't have to cut legs or anything like that. You probably have to be a bit more deliberate in the way you do things, but other than that, it's rather pain-free. Yeah, so I think the plan is going to do an order. I have a big batch of parts order, and anyway, most of the capacitors, the SMD capacitors and resistors, and I am going to probably 100 at a time every second day or something like that, and make this more of a jog than a sprint, if you know what I mean. So that way I hopefully won't burn out on doing this. Some parts I already started looking at, I can't find on just the one site, so I'm going to have to order from a few different sites. Right now I'm going through Farnell for Ireland, and then the question of the custom ICs, Budgie, Lisa, and all that kind of stuff might be more problematic. It might be an eBay job or asking favors from friends or whatever. The other thing is we need to probably talk about is the issue of cost on doing this. And I can foresee this being overall quite costly. This is why I'm going to do it in sections, bit by bit. But I can see this being far, far more expensive to build than actually buying an original Amiga 1200. And from what I can see on eBay and here and there, you can certainly still do that. So these sort of only make sense as a project, or if there's a real scarcity in supply. So cost-wise, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not even going to tally how much it costs overall. but it's just, I can see this being a very expensive build. Anyway, let's keep going. All right, so that's all of the resistors and capacitors in. I lost count at some point, but I think there's around the 250 mark here and close to 200 here, something like that, probably more. It's a lot of little bits to solder, but I think I did an okay job. I ended up getting myself one of those flat knife edge type of tip for my soldering iron, and I think that works great. I should probably have gotten one of those ages ago, but it's very handy for these type of stuff. It really gets in the corner. So we have here there you go. So I've a little light on for the 5 volt, as shown in the guide by Chucky. And here I couldn't find the exact choke that was in the photos that he provided, but he says that you can use ferrite beads, and he actually has them in the listing. I should have said in the project page, there's also a link to a DigiKey listing for all the parts. He's got a bill of material anyway, but you'll find the exact parts that he got. So you can get either the same from whatever supplier you choose, or similar ones. The connector was gifted to me by Terrible Fire. It's one of the square ones, as was the RGB connector here. But for now, the guide recommends that we just plug this in and check one that our 5 volt LED lights up. There you go. Yeah. I'm glad that works well with the black. I'm glad I put an orange or yellow LED. There's a ticking coming from my power supply. I'm going to switch it off. It's not that there's a problem with the board. It does that when, if I switch on the power supply on its own, come on, it does exactly that. And if I measure the voltages here, I get for 12 volt, I get 14 volts, thereabouts. For 5 volt, I get a voltage that moves between 4.55 and 4.95, and it seems to move over time, goes back and forth between both. And for 12 volt, I get close to nothing. I've done some research a while back online, and it seems to be certain power supply, that's the behavior when you measure them without load, and once they have a load, they behave normally. But it's interesting. Some people get that, some people don't get that at all, and we actually get different results on their power supply. So I did read up a bit more, and indeed some of the cheaper made, so there was a few versions of the 1200 power supply, and there was a cost reduced one that does indeed behave funny without any load, and I've seen people report the same behavior. So just under 450 volts on the 5 volt rail, over 12 volt on the 12 volt rail, and nothing, absolutely nothing, or very little on the minus 12 volt rail. So it's that power supply. I checked inside, so right now there's not much else I can do to check the voltages. The voltages on the board at the test point on the board are the same as the ones right off the power supply. So I have to trust that it's expected behavior. All right, next we need to install these guys. These are diodes for power distribution and things like that. So let's do that. I think there's about 8 of them or so to install. And there you go. We got our diodes in place. So there's one here, one here, one here, one here, one here. That's 5. And there's 3 here, but the guide, Chucky says not to install them yet, because I think this is where we'll get our voltage point. But next we need to place our crystal here, which I don't have. I've ordered one. I thought I had one, but it doesn't quite fit, so I've ordered one. So I'm waiting for that to arrive. It's going to take probably a week. And then after that, we'll just measure that we indeed have an oscillation right at that tiny little point here. It's a handy little point, unmask, just to check that we get our oscillation once the board is powered. So we're going to do that. And I think this is going to be all for essentially what is phase 1. Phase 2, well, I need at least budgie and a couple of ICs to get some sync signal, and then after that we're gonna have to source these guys. Well, I need to source this as well, so it might be a while before the next video. These can be expensive. I think I have a source for them, but I'm gonna pay full price for them, really. Anyway, let's focus on this first, one step at a time. We've got, at this stage, we need to put this clock oscillator, in, and I have some ICs to put. So we got the budgie here, Paula, Gail, Alice, Lisa, and hopefully by the end of this video, we should see some sign of sync signal on video. We need to test the clock as well, that is working fine. So I've already put this in. I'm going to get the oscilloscope out and check that we are indeed getting a pulse on the clock. And then we'll have to put budgie in and test that we're getting a right clock signal at, where is it? Our some resistor. I'll find it again. Just following the guide that Chucky put in place for people to do their own. In the time it's taking me to just put those down, he's probably made 5 or 6. The man is a machine, and he's building this so fast. But I suppose he's used to it, and he has all the ICs on hand. He probably has a stock of everything. It's taken me time even, and a lot of money even, to source these. I don't have a spare board or spare board to scavenge them from, and I don't really have access to new old stock. So I had to source them from a few places on eBay and other places on the internet. And that's not even the entire set. I'm waiting to receive the CIA ICs processor. I'm probably doing this the hard way and the slow way, but yeah, it'll be a good benchmark to see how much it costs and how much effort goes into it for somebody like me who doesn't have all these parts on hand, because that's a consideration you need to keep in mind. Anyway, let's enough talking. Let's solder and measure stuff. Anyway, on the topic of measuring stuff, I have my old Amiga 500 power supply instead of the power supply for this guy, which, as we found out, gives out weird readings when it's not under load. So I've just connected it, and indeed I'm reading all the correct voltages. You can read +5 on my plus 12 here, and -12 is somewhere else, and it's all reading fine. So that's good news so far. All right, so I got my scope here set up. It's going to be interesting. I don't have a ton of space on this workbench anymore. And the point where you can measure this is right here, right this, let me zoom in. This little point here, which Chuck is conveniently kept unmasked. So we're going to do that. So it's powered on, and it should ideally measure 20, where is it? There it is. And there you go. 28 megahertz. Thereabouts. Yeah, that's good enough. So, that's just straight out of the oscillator. So now we need to put in budgie and remeasure the frequency, and we should have a fairly stable clock then. So I've just realized I've been talking to myself for the past 20 minutes, soldering this guy. I hadn't pressed play. But anyways, it's now in place. I've just cleaned as best as I could. And my last comment on these were about the amount of flux that's needed. And it seems to be that in the flux community, whatever that is, the consensus is that too much flux is better than not enough, and it's probably better to clean a lot of excess afterwards than not having enough flux and damaging stuff. I see one trace here that probably has a bit too much solder, but I think you can live with that if it's not shorted. Giving this a last inspection as well with I have this magnifier, I have this lamp here, which has a magnifier and a pair of glasses. So I'm getting a good look at this now at this stage, but it seems to be okay. I've cleaned the flux as much as I can outside. So cool, that's my first SMD IC. All right, so we got Budgie in. I got my oscilloscope. So this is the save waveform from directly from the oscillator here. And the oscillator goes into, it goes into pin 94, which is the third one from here. And pin 95 here is the output of that clock. So it gets buffered in Budgie and then it gets output on pin 95. So we can measure that on a resistor underneath the board. So I'm going to flip that over. Let's repower it. And here, E133, this guy here is where I want to measure my clock. So just superimposed on the save signal. There you go. Okay, so we got a clock out of Budgie. We can move on to soldering the other ICs. Those PLCC type of ICs are just a pain to solder. That took me forever and I hated every single minute of it. I thought this was going to be the hardest because the pitch was smaller, but it's actually ended up being the easiest. The pins on these just go around under the chip, so it's actually hard to see if the solder has gone right under. So you end up having to, well, first I had to revert back to my round tip because the knife edge one that works so well for these just doesn't work really for that. And then you can't really, well, I couldn't really drag solder them. Even that, it kind of looks like the solder doesn't go under, but it does. And so I had to check afterwards, after cleaning, you need to check and double check first that there's no bridges that happens behind, because that can happen as well. So none of the pins are bridged, and then check for continuity to wherever that trace is going. So it's so tedious. And yeah, there's a few more, but they have less pins. So hopefully it'll be, quicker. I don't anticipate that it will be now at this stage, having done these big trees. Didn't like doing those. So next we need to, check that we have a sync signal. Normally we should get a sync signal with these ICs in. So I'm going to put I have the RGB connector that I'm going to use. I'm going to source as well a VGA connector. It says no scan doubler. That's why scan popped in my head. But for now, I use RGB. I'm going to try to make this as complete and versatile as possible. Use the RGB connector. We also need to populate a couple of extra things. So I believe this LSO8 here, I think that's the only one on the board. And then we have a shift register IC that we need to populate as well. Sometimes it's recommended. I see one here. I'm not sure if there's another one on the board. I'll double check which one it is. And those PNP transistors need to be populated as well to make sure that we get sync signal. We won't get a picture, but we'll get, if it works correctly, and if my monitor picks up the signal, that has proven to be sometimes temperamental with a few arcade boards. Anyway, so hopefully it'll pick that up. What I'm expecting to happen is that we might get a change of color on the screen, but there's a prompt that tells you whenever SCART is connected. So I'm hoping that as soon as I've powered the Amiga, the SCART will be recognized as connected. If that doesn't happen, we can double check that we get a sync signal anyway. I'll have to figure out which one is a sync pin, or if I can tap it from somewhere else. We can look through an oscilloscope if we get a sync signal at all. So fingers crossed. Also, I want to mention, because people will ask me, this is the flux I'm using. This one was sent to me by Chucky. Thank you very much. That was very, very generous. And it's been great. I mean, I have some flux, but for stuff like that, you really want a good solid product. So I was told this is the one to have. So there you go. Thank you very much, Chucky, for sending me that. Much appreciated. Something I should have mentioned as well while I was making these is where the pin one is. So on this guy, there's a little notch and it should align with the one corner. But on these guys, you see this sort of a corner that has an extra line. It's not there. And if you look very carefully on these IC, this corner is actually sort of chiseled off, which is not the case here. Or here. But this corner has a chisel. So you should align these with this. And to make things even more confusing, and I had to catch myself a few times. I was like, oh my God, did I align this properly? But yeah, so it's right here and right here on these two ICs, and it's here on this one. So just keep that in mind. You can see here, this corner on the CI is here, but on the Paula it's up there. On this one, it's over there. On this one, it's over here. They're all sort of facing a different way. So just make sure you don't just align them with the text facing like down all the time, because then you're in for a treat having to desolder these. All right, so we got the LS08 here. Indeed, the shift register, the LS166 is here. And I'm not sure if it was just this and this transistor, but I actually put all three of them. We should get a signal on this pin for V-Sync, I think, on this pin for H-Sync. And this is C-Sync here, but we haven't done anything to the circuit, I think, to enable it. So I'm not sure we're getting anything on that pin. So anyway, let's just check horizontal sync, and there you go. Yeah, we get something, and V-Sync should be a lot slower. Yeah, it's actually, I haven't said anything to a triggering here, so it's having a hard time just finding a stable triggering. But yes, it's and H-Sync. Yeah, there you go. All right, so I think next we need to put the this guy in. Is at the keyboard MPU, get the serial going, and I think we're going to need to putty into the serial, but we have a few more stuff to put in. This is one, the processor. So I have these on order, so I'm just waiting to receive them, but we'll do all this in this video. I've decided to put sockets here. So this here is the slot for the keyboard MPU, and also we need the low voltage detector and this 3 megahertz crystal here. I'm actually putting some insulation around it because I couldn't find a small form factor one, so I have a big one. Hopefully it won't get in the way of anything. I'm not sure, but if it does, it's not too big a job. It's a true old one, so it's not that bad to replace. I decided to use sockets here because I'm going to need one. We're going to need to do this PAL as well, and because it needs to be programmed, I want to put sockets on that. So I have the GAL or PAL, forget whichever is which. Here, I need to program it, but I'm waiting for the sockets to arrive, and they're taking their sweet time to arrive. What I have, though, is a few of these sockets. So it needs another 2 here for the CIA chips and one for this guy here. So I'm going to put one, I think, next. We need to put the odd CIA as well, so we get some visual when we do the serial tests. So I'm going to put a socket here. I'm actually put these sockets everywhere. Just be careful, because as you can see, it has a bigger footprint than an IC normally. So they can take a bit more space. I'm also going to do a continuity test using the schematics to make sure that everything goes to everywhere. A lot of this goes into this pin out here anyway, and around that area. But I'm going to do the same as well for every single one. So it's going to take a bit of time. Like I said, I'm not entirely still familiar or confident with my surface mount soldering skills. So it's better to be careful and double check everything. So I'm just going to continue to test, not on the solder patch, but on the pins here on the top to make sure that everything is fine. Next, we'll put the sockets here. As soon as I receive it, I'm going to put the socket here and program the .IC, and we should be ready to go. I have a serial connector here. I've got the GAL chip in. Chucky provides, let me just change this. Chucky provides the file that you can use to program this. You need just a standard, the TL866, whatever it is, EEPROM programmer, and you get an adapter for these guys, and that will program it, no problem. I've got the diagnostic ROMs populated right here. Got my sockets wherever I need them. Got the CIA here, the is it the even or odd? I forget which is which. So I think we're good to go for the next test. I put an extra LED here because we need that. So the next test is essentially, we're going to try and power this. What we should see is the LED flash, sort of like a guru. So it should flash slowly on and off, that guru meditation kind of error that we get, which is essentially what's happening, but it's a good indication that we can progress on to the next phase. So if we see that, then we can continue with our build and not spend too much time error tracing. I did spend a lot of time, because this is my first build and because this is SMD stuff, I did spend a lot of time just double checking each of my solder points here and just make sure that they actually go to the right place. So it took a lot of time. I had the schematics down. I have the this power supply, which is one of those you find on eBay, more reliable really than the original power supply. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And it's on brand with this build. It's a new build, new modern kind of power supply-ish. Anyway, let's power this on and see if we get that LED. Yeah. There you go, flashing. Yeah, slow enough. I think this is what we expect to see. So I'm happy with that. And I put a red LED beside the yellow here. Okay, so next we need to populate Paula. And I think, is it the 1489 or 1488? And we can start checking our diagnostic ROM. So we're going to have to, I've put the serial port connector here. We're going to use a serial to USB adapter, connect to a PC and see the output from the diagnostic ROM through the serial port. Again, I mean, Chucky has spent the time to do a full guide for this. Do make sure you follow the guide. Do not be tempted to put like parts randomly or put everything and then figure it out afterwards. It's a recipe for disaster. I've seen so many of these type of builds, maybe not even as complex as that by any shot, but where people just didn't follow a step-by-step or didn't follow the recommendation process for building those, and they ended up with just a paperweight that they can't really diagnose. So just make sure you take your time, follow the guide, double check everything. Don't be too confident with your solder skills, and it should go fine. Oh yeah, and obviously the CPU is now in place. Right, next step on this, I've put the 1488, is that the one at this location? Can't remember. And I have a USB to serial adapter, and I didn't have an adapter for this guy, but I just used whatever connectors here to make a basic null modem. Anyway, so what should happen here is we are going to test that the ROMs are working. So I've made it's COM4 where the USB is. We're going to load PuTTY, and I'm going to use the serial to COM5, and I think that's all we need. Should open a window here, and I should, if I start this guy, I should, yes. So there you go. I think this is the output we should be getting. Well, it should be failing right now. It's trying to check the RAM, but we've no RAM in, so it's just failing on every RAM check. There you go. So it stops. It says no memory found, halting system. This is what we should be getting anyway. Fails on trying to write anything to RAM, really. I'm not sure though while this is passing. So maybe I'll check with Chucky or Terrible Fire that this is the exactly expected output when you have absolutely no RAM in. So I did ask Terrible Fire and then I felt very silly afterwards because, of course, there's no RAM in, so all the address lines are going to be put high. So it's not actually showing you that the write was successful, but that the read was successful. So it's reading all highs. So 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, F, 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 F. So it's passing the test, reading all ones. That's expected when you've absolutely no RAM in place. Feel very silly. So the last time we seemingly successfully installed all the ICs that we needed to connect through the serial out into the computer and to see that the diagnostic ROMs were indeed starting. And now the next step is to actually populate those RAMs. These are going to be interesting to populate because they're SMD components, but those legs are like these guys, whatever they're called, I forget. And they're going to be a pain to solder. These are probably the hardest one to solder in place. Not just because it's those, PLCC or something like that, but because there's very little clearance on each side. The way that Chucky recommends to do it is to tin those pads, which I was doing for these anyway. And then use a hot air station to just melt the solder, and then finishing touches with the iron. I have one of those, but I'm still afraid of it, and it's not great. It's fine if I want to remove something from a PCB that I don't really care that much, but I'm still afraid to use it. So I'm going to try first to just tin those, put a ton of flux as usual, and then maybe just use my soldering iron to put them in place. He recommends doing those one by one and then to SSH again every time to check that the RAM is connected properly. So I'm going to do that, and I will every time also I will actually check for continuity to make sure that the top here is connected to whatever other pads, because they're all in parallel, for at least for data and address lines, and then see where the the write enable, output enables are going to, and check continuity on those wherever it's going to. So a little bit of checking. I do have the schematics here, so those 4 IC, and you can see the these are the data line, address lines, and here, output enable, write enable, RAS and CS. So just check. We'll just check every time for each IC. So we're going to start with those guys and just go work our way down. Right, so we got this one finally in place. They are painful, and actually you see this one is slightly crooked, but God, this is worse if I look at it like that. I'll try to do a better job on the other ones, and the other ones might be even trickier because this one had a lot of space on each side, but the space between those two here is going to be tricky. So I have my serial rig back into my laptop here, and if you look at the diagnostic ROM output, so you need to look for this address here, 100,000 up, and essentially it's writing. So if you look above, it's writing 000, and here that puts it reads FFF. So that's what we should see when there's no RAM. But now we've that RAM in, it's writing AAA, and it should read AAA on the first 4 bytes here. So we can see that consistent, across everywhere. Perfect. So that means that RAM is soldered properly, or at least there's no issues with this RAM. So we can continue. So we'll put the second one All right, second RAM is in, and this time we should be looking right at the beginning of the so these address the right and the first 4 bytes here, right at the beginning of the address, the address map. And yeah, I think that's all good. 0A555. I'm just going to go down a little bit. Oops, sorry. Yeah, I think we're good. Okay. Third RAM, and this time I probably won't film it. It's the same process. So I find if I actually bring this a little bit more towards this edge, it gives me enough room to do it with the soldering iron between the two. So not too bad. It could have been a lot worse, actually. So yeah, pretty happy with that. I'm going to clean this guy and then move on. Oh man, was this a pain and a half. So essentially I was getting all the address workings for this one, but this one I just couldn't quite get it to work. And I'd actually, because I've pushed every single one a little bit further, I made myself my life harder here on this edge especially. But I think it's all there now. And by the looks of it, I'm getting 40 blocks of memory. Perfect. And all good. Green, okay. There you go. Whew, that took a while. For a while, I was getting fails on the memory read-write, as if this guy wasn't properly connected, and indeed the supply line just wasn't quite soldered properly. Once I got that working, it kept looking at just 8 blocks. Sorry about the noise, and then and then it would crash and I couldn't get it to continue. So I just double checked everything and redid all my solid points, and it's working now. So I believe the next step is to actually put the video DAC and a few other ICs around it, and hopefully get some video signal out of this. So with this in place, next, I think we need to populate this guy here. There are 6 diodes over here that we need to populate. And quite possibly, if we don't get a proper video signal, I think this guy, in some cases, needs to be populated. Always makes me nervous. Stuff like that. But yeah, we'll start with those. We'll see if we get a signal through the RGB port, and maybe we need to populate this guy then afterwards. But I think that's enough for an RGB signal. Then we can look into maybe getting the VGA and composite working down the line. Ultimately, I mean, RGB is what I'm going to use for this. Yeah, before we continue, just a few more comments on these guys. Just again, take your time and take the time and extra effort to actually check continuity and double check with your schematics. I know it's tedious and it's annoying, but it'll save you most likely time in resoldering stuff, not being sure what's soldered properly or not. So what I did is I checked continuity on each of the pads, check that it matched, on the next one or whatever. And then for the couple of lines that aren't connected, or the ones that, like the chip enable, the write enable, that kind of stuff. You can check with the output, trace them back to where they're going, or you could actually just check very carefully if you've thin enough probes on your multimeter that the pad and the top, discontinuity between the bottom and the pad and the top. Having said all that, I still had some issues. Some of them were because even though there was contact between the pad and the IC, it wasn't soldered properly. So it was sometimes testing fine, sometimes failing. And whenever I'd press on some of the chips, I could see the different results. So just go over it a few times, make sure that you can clearly see that there's a solder, and then that you're getting continuity. But yeah, these are tedious. They're probably the toughest ones on this whole build, and there's quite a few SMD stuff, but these definitely were the hardest ones to get right. But we got there in the end. I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but just follow the guide. Once more, follow the guide. Chucky went to the trouble of putting a very detailed guide online. Just make sure you follow it. You follow his instructions. Otherwise, you just end up with a big paperweight. We're nearly at the point where we can claim that we have a working machine. So let's keep going until we get a video signal.
For after Owlet created but he said, realized that these creatures were indeed smaller dwarves. From then on, the elves would leave them alone, and they curse existence. When they attacked was their hatred of the Knoll by the petty dwarves who still lingered there. The dwarves are greatly compensated. However, their chieftain, Min, attempts to murder Finrod in his sleep. They become the last surviving member of his kind. For it is said that the great dwarves despise the petty dwarves. Indeed, as we'll see throughout the history of elves, they give Finrod the name Felin. Nargothrond had recently been destroyed, and King Thingol of Doriath has come into possession of. They had become obsessed with the necklace, and in exchange for their labor, they demand Thingol give them
with Dr. Squatch. Real soap?
A group of green elves in ambushing the dwarves near Sarn Athra. Both elves and dwarves alike would travel east to the lands of Eriador and beyond.
All right, so that's our video DAC. We got these diodes in here, and we got our, what was it, 139. I've just plugged in the RGB, and there you go. We got output on the video, and the ROMs, ROM are indeed loading up. It crashes here, it's normal. We need to populate that 7486 right here. By the way, for people, this is what you see when you power on the Amiga. It'll come up, it'll flash for a while as it's doing all the memory checks. So this is all the RAM checks that we're seeing online, and all the different checks on the serial output. And there you go. And there you go. Okay. Perfect. So that's with the LS86 populated here now. So one problem here, we can't do any of the tests because first we don't have a keyboard. So I think the option is to actually do all the tests from the serial output. So I still need the laptop. I still need the USB serial thing, and we're going to control the diagram through my laptop here, and with the keyboard on the laptop. I think that's the idea. So actually, it's even more simple than that. All we need to populate is the 1489 here. So I'm going to do that now and plug the serial back in. And I think essentially we've done page 3 of, once we've done that, we've done page 3 of Chucky's guide. So that's great. I mean, great progress on this one. Delighted. The RAMs certainly were the uncertain factor for me, but it's all done. You can see light here now is on. Yeah, we got more stuff flashing up. It's great. There you go. That's last I see. Well, not last, but last for this part. As you can see, every time I solder something, I use isopropyl alcohol. and it's there's some people say it can be conductive. Some type of flux can be conductive. I don't think this one is, but what flux can do, it can actually corrode, and I've seen that happen on arcade boards. It can actually corrode over time some of the metal, which then becomes sort of conductive because they're so close together, and the corrosion can actually jump from one pin to the other. So always clean your flux. It shouldn't be conductive, but always clean your flux and do it as you go. It's just a lot easier. Anyway, let's test this. So I'm going to power on the laptop once more, and we'll see if we can control indeed the diagram from the laptop. Right, I got serial connected. I'm going to power the Amiga, and oh, there you go. And we're seeing, so that's the ROM checks flashing green. It's doing perfect. And here it's telling us, use serial collection, hold any key. And there you go. So you have to press a key when it tells you when those dots are coming. And now we should be able to control exactly. Oh, that's great. So now I should be able to... this is awesome. Okay, perfect. Well, page 3 of Chucky's guide is done. We are at the stage where the RAMs are working. We're booting the diagnostic ROM. We can control the ROMs through the serial port over there, and we need to continue our work. So we still have one of the CIA chips here that is missing. So we're going to put that in. And we're pretty much at the stage where we can start getting our mouse controller working, and we're going to slowly add on the hard drive, the keyboard controls, all that kind of stuff. So right now we have a booting board. It's at least booting to the diagram. Next step is I think we want to be able to control the diagrams with the mouse, so we're going to populate the CI here. I've already put a socket on this, so just a matter of dropping it in. So let's do that. Okay, so we got the CIA chip on, the Amiga is on, we're connected via serial to my computer here. And this is the main menu, so I'm not going to use the output, the RGB output yet. I'm going to do this through the menu here. Let me put this on a stand. All right, so here I'm just using the laptop keyboard. So we want to go to system info, CIA. There you go. CIA test, and we're going to do test CIAs. It says press a key to start the test, and we should see everything show up in green. So the first CIA is working. It's going to be now, and perfect. That's it. That's it. Yes. So our CIA chip is working. Or more importantly, it's soldered properly. So next we're going to put the connector for the mouse. I believe we have a 166 to put in somewhere, or did we put it already? I've been so far very good at following the guide, but I might have needed to, yeah, I don't see anything else. Maybe we needed it for something else. Can't remember now. And we're going to put our connector port, and I think this is the last that we see of the serial. Right, so I got my DB9 connector, headers for the mouse, and you shouldn't be that close to the, and this is the 166, which for some reason I had already populated, and I'm not exactly sure why I did that. After all my recommendations on following the guide, this is me not applying my own rules. There was the 244 that you'll see on the guide that is recommended before putting the CIA, but in fact on the first page of the guide, Chucky recommends putting that in. Or I think it's when you're testing the CPU that we get the Guru meditation sort of light when we're powering on the Amiga. So this one is already populated. That's normal. This one shouldn't have been, and I don't know why I did that. Anyway, it's mystery. But as you can see, we've got our test here, and I'm controlling this with the mouse. It's not the best surface, but it works. Yeah, perfect. And do the button work? Let's go back up. there you go. System info. Excellent stuff. So we got a mouse working. Next thing, we're going to test the parallel port. So I'm going to put the parallel port is here. We're going to put that in. There's one thing to test the parallel port, and what's needed is a loopback adapter. I don't have one, but we're going to do our best to sort of MacGyver one, just like I did for my serial cable. I just used those whatever DuPont cables, wires. I'm going to use similar stuff for that. I think that's female though, so I'm going to have to use bits of wire. Anyway, we'll build one and test our parallel port next. All right, so this is our little rig for the parallel port. Always remember the parallel port is a female connector, so pinout comes from one would be on this side on male connectors, but one is on this side on female connectors. So essentially we need to, let me grab something a bit better. We need to connect pin 1 to pin 10, pin 2 and 3 are connected together. 2 and 3, 4 and 5, 6 and 7. And then we've got pin 8 connected to pin 12 and 13. And underneath that, there's another small jumper connected pin 11, pin 9, to pin 11. And then here on pin 14, we put a small diode connected to a 220 ohm resistor. Something similar enough to light it from 5 volts, and that goes into ground. So you got a lot of grounds on the bottom, so we got +5 essentially coming out of here. I think the next 2 pins are something else, but the rest is pretty much ground. So I have it, I think on pin 18 here. So let's plug that in and see if this works. I don't know, so we'll see. All right, let's power this on. Oh yeah, so yeah, there is a light, so we're getting 5 volt. We are booting indeed. Cool. So let's just go to, I'm assuming is port test and parallel port. Oh yeah, and here it actually tells you how to build the loopback adapter. Anyway, I got issues with there you go. Perfect. So we are all running fine, and it keeps testing until you tell it to stop testing. You can actually see the RX and lights working. Cool. So from the port test, we can also test other stuff here. For our purposes, because we're building this, we already knew that the mouse was working. Same with the serial port, because we're able to actually serial in and out of it. So this is why we are not doing every single test. I mean, this is a wide purpose type of a diagnostic ROM. So here it's handy for building the Amiga, but it's very handy to have. And again, fair play, Chucky, for putting this together. It's a great piece of software. So now that we know our parallel port and CI is working, we're going to, normally we would tackle the audio here, but I am still waiting for electrolytic capacitors. Namely, we need those two anyway to even get the audio done. We'll need the audio amp as well. So, but I have that, but I'm going to wait for the capacitors. So essentially we're going to jump to the next part of this, which is the drive, and I'll do the audio after that. Once I get the capacitors. So I've put the connector for the hard drive or the ID card, and I've made myself an image for I think it's Workbench 3.1. That I've tailored. So there's different tutorials online on how to make this. Some of them are on video, some of them are text. I prefer text stuff, although I think Nostalgia Nerd had made a pretty comprehensive and easy to follow one. But I'll link to the, well, if you prefer the video, there's a few mistakes actually in the video and things have changed since he's done it. And I found an up-to-date guide. So I'll link that in the video on how to make yourself a hard drive or a flash card for your Amiga 1200. Anyway, let's connect this and do the test. Okay, so here we need to go to drive tests. because our hard drive is controlled by Gale. We're going to do the Gale test, and there you go. There's a hard drive detected. Everything seems to be working fine, I believe. Yeah, cool. Next is the connector for the floppy here and the external one. Headers as well for the lights. So there's on the Amiga 1200, you'll have a little daughter board with the LEDs that indicate floppy and power status, and maybe the drive. Can't remember. Anyway, and those transistors here need to be populated for that as well. So we're going to do that next. Oh, and you'll see here there's a little notch just right here. And that means that little pin shouldn't be connected. So we should have like 3 pins, nothing, and then 1. So we're going to remove one of the pin on the header.
Et puis le pipi, c'est normal. En fait, c'est tout le temps la même recette. On m'a vendu une dose, apparemment on a... Pourquoi il y a des bonnes doses chez Amérique? Un tapé le cul par terre. On va goûter sur le pamplemousse. C'est là qu'on devra aller monter les meilleurs goûts.
All right, so we got the daughter board plugged in, and I think what we should see is just the power connector, because we are not booting. There's no activities on the hard drive, and there's no activity on the floppy drive. So there you go. Perfect. Next, we need the keyboard connector, and I believe some headers somewhere for the clock port. And after that, we can tackle the PCMCIA connector. For the keyboard connector, I have to chip, because I test fitted it earlier, well, before this video really, but it was going to, because there's a socket here, it was going to be tight on this side, so I just had to chip at the socket. Oh, like barely anything, just one little go with the sharp knife. Just so it would actually fit nicely, and it does now. Okay, cool. Progress. Okay, the connector here for the keyboard done, and I've actually removed the diagnostic ROMs and put in Kickstart ROMs, 3.1 ROMs. I got the image from my other 1200, so I just copied the files. I'm sure it's easy to find online, or you can go to places like Amiga store and get these as well, which is where I got some of the stuff I'm going to use afterwards comes from. Yeah, so I've got the Kickstart ROMs in just to check that it's booting. And look at this, we've a working machine essentially, not fully yet. There's still a lot of stuff to put in. The PCMCIA here and all these buffers, but yeah, it's booting. I'm going to put the hard drive now image that I made a while back and see if that boots to a workbench. Fingers crossed. There you go. So I can't use this because, well, I'm missing the mouse board, which I didn't actually realize until now. I'm not sure where I get one of those. I'll get on to Chucky about this. Not a big deal for now. Anyway, it's booting to Workbench, and cool. So this is an image I made a while back, and I used the 1.3 Workbench, 1.3, 1.2, whatever kind of look, because that's why all I had was an Amiga 500 when I was a kid, like a lot of us really. And when I saw the new OSs or the modern OSs, like for machines like the 1200 back then, I didn't like the gray, very sober and very austere sort of look. I much prefer the blue of the original 500 Workbench. So I went for something like that. You can theme it with classic Workbench, and so that's what I did. Quick pause before I continue. This is the point where things get a little bit dangerous, because the temptation to speed through the rest of this process is very high. So when you're at that stage, you know you have a working Workbench, working Kickstart. Just take your time again. Don't be tempted to rush it. I nearly made a mistake here, soldering the wrong SMD IC 244 instead of 245. So yeah, just be careful. Take your time. We're nearly there, but it's not a reason to speed through things. One thing is this is a little bit finicky. Sometimes it moves, sometimes it doesn't, and I have to move the cable. I think the cable here is dodgy. I've had this for a while. I was going to do something with my Amiga 600 with it. I never did, so I decided to use it for that. But I think it's the ribbon cable that's a bit dodgy. So I'll see if I can find a new one. But under the right proper angle, it does work. You can see the TF-MSX here. Cool. This is, oh my God, I'm so happy. So we still have a good bit of stuff to do. We still have the audio to do, and we have the PCMCI card to do, and then all the electrolytics to put on. So we're not quite done yet with the motherboard. So we're gonna keep going. One thing to watch out for is the proximity of this socket, which made it really, really tricky to actually solder this IC. And I spotted that early on, and I was like, I'm going to do this early on. So just get it over with, so I don't even have to think about it. So I got it soldered, but I have a really fine tip for my soldering iron, so I use that. It works, but yeah, just be careful if you're putting a socket on that. In hindsight, maybe put this one in first, because the socket can actually block this guy. That's a mistake on my part, but it works. So we're going to put the rest of them, the PCMCIA slot, and we need a transistor here for the reset fix. So yes, indeed, you can get a little PCB for the mouse here, or a little kind of cable connector thing. Essentially, you plug this here, and there's a DB9 connector right there. And my plan, after finding out what I was missing, was essentially just to use I have these cables, connectors from my Eurorack stuff. I don't have one that's just 5-pin, but it doesn't really matter. So if I just plug pin one here, I've cut the wires that I didn't need, and I was going to just connect this to a mouse port connector, and yeah, be done with it. It would work. That's pretty much what is there anyway originally. But I need to place an order for another cable, because this cable is just too dodgy, unreliable. So I'm going to go to Amiga store, and I like the solution. They have something that actually goes over the PCMCIA port and has a ribbon cable that goes to the extension connection on the 1200. So it allows to have an additional hard drive. Not that I need one hard drive. Like, this is 2 gigabytes. Ideally, you want 4 gigabytes if you want to store a lot of stuff. But I mean, 2 gigabytes is plenty. No, it's not. It's not. I ended up using an 8 gigabyte card instead. My plan was to just have audio stuff and trackers and that kind of stuff, and a few mods, good few mods. I ended up filling it with demos then, and then games. 8 gigabytes, I recommend for your card. The other thing is the secondary card is a bit tricky to get working. I have a pile of CF cards, and only one worked. They have issues with being recognized as slave or master, because the way they were built at the time, not all support slave master functionality. So you can be lucky, you can be unlucky. There's no telling which brands have, and within some brands, some do, some don't. So it's potluck, and you could be unlucky and just order a batch of them that doesn't support master slave. So that secondary drive, I probably don't recommend anyway. So that's essentially the plan here. I need to place an order. So I'm going to place an order for a proper connector, board or PCB or whatever they have for that. And I just call it a day. There's no point MacGyvering something if they're super cheap. Anyway, okay, let's do that.
Wait in fact, right there. I'll see if I can upload some of the venue, and you put a ton of cat, for a period of time you go to one. So yeah, good on them. As a song, and it's so relevant to 2023, and yet it was 1985. Oh, it was okay. Oh, she was 15. She was up to it. In Brody.
All right, so I got the LM347 in place. There was a few remaining transistors to put in, and the two capacitors. I received parts from Amiga store. I'm still using my old CF thing here, but I got this one that is buffered and that allows you to connect a second card holder to this part of the Amiga. I also got from them this little port, which I wanted to do myself, but it's just much tidier. And it was like, I think it was €2. I needed to order some stuff, so it didn't make much sense me making one from scratch. So also I was missing the transistor from this guy here, but I have this now booting again, and now I can use the mouse and we got sound. Oh man, I haven't heard this tune in ages. Beach volleyball. Was it Ocean published that? So there you go. We now have a fully functional Amiga 1200 motherboard, and this is the end of page 4 of Chucky's guide. And indeed, things are working just fine. Oh my God, I'm so happy. I'm super happy about this. We still have one page left of the guide, and it's for somewhat optional stuff. So enabling the composite and I think VGA, maybe some NDSC stuff, which I'm not going to do. So we'll do that next. There's also the question of putting this in a case. Which I happen to have now. I have a case that Stephen sent me, and some other parts as well from Amiga store to put in. We'll also need to get a keyboard, which I have a keyboard. It's an Amiga 500 keyboard, but I have a membrane from a 1200, and it is possible to hack the 500 keyboard to fit in the 12. I have this that was sent to me by Stephen. Thank you very much to Terrible Fire. And there is also some stuff from amigastore.eu, and there's stuff like the GoTech and just a few bits and bobs to finish the build. So we are going to put this motherboard into this. So this is white. This is a white one. We also have a keyboard to worry about. We need to plug in the GoTech. Actually, I haven't checked whether that works at all. Ah, wow. These are really nice cases. Very white. It's a bit like it doesn't have the beige of the original, but it's still very nice. How does this slap together? I want to open this. Oh yeah, it's screwed in. So we have stuff inside. We have, I believe this is a connector, IDC connector, all this kind of stuff for a GoTech. Let's just get some screws. Oh, we got a membrane. Nice. Let's take care of that. Yeah, so that's the membrane for the keyboard, and I do have a spare keyboard. We'll worry about that later on. All right. Oh, nice. Not sure which way this goes. So this would be 12 volts. And it's on this side. So yellow is over there. there you go. We got our LEDs working, and I think the Gotek is indeed lit up. Oh my God. We'll have to start worrying about the keyboard. What I have here is a spare Amiga 500 keyboard. This is the same. The layout here is the exact same as the 1200, which I have here, and even the enter key here is the same one. There's a different one where that notch here is at the bottom, but this is actually the model you want. So, in theory, technically, this should actually work. I just need to change the membrane, remove this, because the membrane has a long connector, and that should connect directly into your motherboard, which has all the stuff for the keyboard. Whereas here it was actually on this little daughter board. So I'm going to remove this, all the 500 screws here, and we might need to do some little cosmetic fittings. I don't think the Amiga, this guy 1200 has this bar here and these little notches. So we might need to do some creative fitting here, especially here. This might actually go in the way of the case, the LED board. So let's just take this apart. Also, the other thing is, as you can see, this is very, very yellow. So we'll need to do a clean. It needs a clean for sure. And it probably needs a retro bright. The only problem with that at the moment, there's been no sun for a month. Since the beginning of July, it's been just horrible torrential weather here in Ireland, and quite cold as well. So retrobiting in those conditions isn't going to help much. As I am editing this, I realize I should probably clarify something. So the Amiga 1200 has a connector on the motherboard for the Amiga 500 keyboard. So technically, I could actually plug that keyboard right into the motherboard. The only problem with that is the membrane on that keyboard was dead. It was cracked. The thing was no longer working. And so the only option I have is either source another 500 membrane, which is silly. I have that 1200 membrane, and that keyboard layout is compatible. So hence why I'm hacking this keyboard to bits to make it fit. But yeah, this is the idea behind it. If you have a working 500 keyboard, you should be able to plug that right into the Amiga 1200 without any problem. I don't know how many of these there are, but there are a lot, and you don't want to lose them. So here, the plastic is actually bumping against that. So it's nothing a little bit of a friendly bit of Dremel cannot take care of. I think we're good everywhere else. What about this guy? Yeah, I'll probably need to cut this here and here, because this is going to get in the way of the Gotek, I suspect. It's not offering any structural linear. Yeah, I need to remove this as well anyway. So I need to cut here. So this is just going to be dangling. This has to go. So we're going to cut the plastic right here and the metal here and here. So you can pretty much cut that entire area kind of flush. I didn't bother with here. There's another thing here. You need a space for the ribbon. So I cut a notch in the metal here and in the plastic. So the ribbon doesn't actually just, get clamped between the metal and the plastic, because that there's an edge that will actually go like that and then back like that. That's one way to wreck your ribbon. Yeah, that clears everything. It's perfect. Okay, next test is obviously the ribbon. Yeah, so this is what I mean here. It just, let me just bring this, because my phone is on a charger right now. And yeah, so this is what you want. You want this to be just flat, no kink and no pressure apply under that edge, because that's what breaks normally. And oh. Oh my God! Oh, look at this! Oh, I'm so happy. I built a full Amiga 1200 from scratch. This is so cool. I know people probably do 5 of them in a day, but this is a big deal, big achievement for me and for this channel, essentially. We're not done. We're not done. There's a few upgrades we can already do with this. And I think, so I have a 1200 here. This is stock. It's got a Terrible Fire card, 1260. I'm going to put that card in here. And now that I see it, I am going to get myself a different box and different set of keys. So we'll keep all the mechanics and everything from the keyboard, but we'll change the keycaps. I might retro-write these at some point in the future, but not for now. And it'll be useful as maybe replacement keys for over there. So I'm going to order keycaps and a box in this video from Amiga1200.net. And I've seen they've some in stock. So I'll also get not a UK, but US keyboard, because they're out of cap keys that I want for the UK. And US is very similar. I think there's like 2 or 3 keys that are different. Honestly, I won't be doing much typing with this machine anyway. So yeah, let's continue this build. Right, at this point, there's a couple of upgrades that I want to do on this Gotek. Let me remove here. So if you look here, the screen is here. When the box is closed, it's a nice OLED screen, but it's hard to see what you're selecting. So I've seen a few people with top boxes on their Amiga. So I want to do one of those and just fit it to this Gotek. So what we need is, well, we have the OLED, but I'm actually going to use another one, a second one. So I'll keep this one here, and I'm going to use one in parallel, this guy here, which is slightly smaller. Essentially, this is what I'm talking about. This is the box people use. This one is badly printed, but it serves a purpose. But the screen can fit here. However, the enclosure is a bit too small for it. Too big, sorry. So I've redone this very design. You can see the gap here. So I've redone this very design to fit one of these. So I'm going to print that. I'm going to use that in parallel. And the hole here is for rotary encoder. So normally you select back and forth in the menu between all the different disk images with those 2 buttons. It's a bit awkward, and once the case is closed, it's hard to get to. So I'm using one of those, which you can already plug in pretty much using the headers provided. So some Goteks have headers, extra headers here that you can use, but they're all the same. They all have these headers. You have your ground and +5. You have your switch is right here, the white lead, and then you have the other 2, which is I think the clock and something else. Anyway. It doesn't matter too much. Just look online. You'll find the required files or documentation online. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to reprint this guy and then find a way to maybe mount this, solder it directly underneath the board, and then use those jumpers to connect to this guy as it is already. It works. It's the same thing as this. It's just different form factor. And I have those because I use them for my sort of a homemade modular stuff. So I've used those. I've a stock of those. So And that's what I'm going to use. The other thing, and you can see it here, is that that mouse part thing is actually, it doesn't quite stop anywhere. And normally you'd probably have a common backplate that you can bolt this to, but I don't have one of those. So what somebody has already made, which is very handy, is one of those guys. You clip that to the back, so I'm going to have to open the case and remove it, and clamp this onto this one, and this edge clamps to this edge, and it secures your mouse port. And I won't have to be fiddling my way through to try and connect the mouse every time I reconnect it. So this one is black. It doesn't matter because you won't see it once it's installed, but I have it in black, and so is this one, because I've ordered a new box and keycaps, and it should be here in a couple of weeks, hopefully, and they will be darker. All right, so I got my other little OLED display just was soldered just right underneath. I made a little connector, and I'm going to use that's not long enough really, so I'm going to use a male connector and going to do that into a female connector as an extension, and it'll allow me to disconnect everything when I open the case. But there you go. I was actually afraid that there wouldn't be enough power for both of them. This one is interesting. I don't know why, but they have a little kind of yellow top. They were probably some sort of OEM. I got these from AliExpress, and there were probably some overflow from some sort of OEM stuff that requested that this was yellow. It's actually it's not bad. Yeah, sorry. If it's idle for 20 seconds, and you can see it all works with the rotary encoder. So I suspect that's what they were, just overstock and probably flog them for cheap. But I got about, I don't know, a dozen of these. So that's handy. So I'm printing the box right now. I can safely put everything back together, I think. I also got that little mounting thing here for the floppy. So now this is in place. It's actually very nice and tidy. I like it. And it's inside, so you don't really see it from the outside. So it's okay on a white case. Cool. Very happy with that. That might work well, actually, having that. It's sort of almost demo-like, if you know what I mean. You know, those cool demo fonts that had some it's like two-tone color reflection thing going. And there you go. That's the look I was looking for. So this one is black on the white case, but the case I'm getting is going to be darker, almost kind of dark gray. And you can see it's a 3D print. I've just lightly sanded it as best as I could, just to give it a smoother but yet rough look. So I just sprayed a little tiny bit of paint. The alternative is to have it, that was another print, look like that. Which is just it's not bad, but it's just so obviously screaming 3D print. I kind of prefer that look, but that's just me. I might sand it a little bit down, a little bit, just to remove some of that gloss. But anyway, so it's working as expected. There you go. Okay, so I just got the box in the mail. So that was pretty quick from Amiga or a1200.net. But these aren't the Kickstarter ones or anything like that. These are the Arashi. So this one looks it's very dark and lovely, but it's slightly see-through in the light. So meaning I'm hoping when there's LEDs, actually the grid here is a lot more see-through than the white case. I'm hoping that the LEDs inside will actually light up, which will come in handy because the 1260 from Terrible Fire has some lights on it. That version, I think there's only 5 or so made. I think Gadget was the one. Terrible Fire certainly got a couple. I have one, and I don't know who else has one, but pretty cool. And I have the black keys. Slowly changing the keys. My God, look at this. So the keys themselves come on this panel here. So you just pop the keys from the underside, and that's it. You're done. Now, oh my God, the keyboard, I mean, they do deliver a great product. A1200.net. So happy with this. It looks really good, but look at this. Oh my God. This has to be my favorite of the lot. The slide blue tint is very subtle, and you could actually put it down to just light, local light, shining some blue on it. But it looks very, very black, very, oh, I'm so happy. This is so cool. And final touch. Let's just see. Ah, yeah, we do see the light of different LEDs shining through. I still need to put obviously the lights here. And there's a cool feature in the workbench. If you open a shell, let me get rid of this. And this is a feature on that special edition that Stephen Terrible Fire sent me, and type in, and actually keyboard is working, type in sweep. This will generate, let me just unplug, I might lose my, there's a series of LED lights. I can kind of see them through the plastic. It's pretty cool. You can see the faint glow coming, just changing out of here. But look underneath. Like a spaceship in there. Oh, this is so cool. Such a cool effect. I think if you're going somewhere, having this on a slight rise, or even just a like little pad of half an inch or something like that, would actually make quite an effect. You can sort of see it through as a reflection through the plastic. Actually, it's just really cool. If it was just a darker environment, you'd definitely see the glow through the plastic. Oh my God! All right, we got everything back together, and I think this is going to be it. I mean, my beautiful blue workbench. I much prefer this workbench than the grey, and even some of the modern workbench. I know there's some cool features, but this is essentially the nostalgia that I want on the machine that I want and the machine that I built. This is going to be it for this series of video. Thank you for sticking with me for now, 5 videos, I think. This was certainly an interesting learning curve for me, as interesting project. Kind of a big deal because I've never done any project like that, at least not on that scale for SMD soldering. So yeah, this was a cool project, and thank you first to Chucky for putting this board together, as in the tracing the original PCB and making all the revisions on the Amiga. This is one of the Amiga he has. He's done more of them for different models of Amiga. And he does other stuff as well, the diagnostic ROMs and far, far more. So thank you, Chucky, for your time and dedication to the hobby and the community. It's amazing. Also, Terrible Fire for sorting me out with a lot of parts and being super patient with all my questions. Whenever there was a problem, I'd go crying to him, and he's been super helpful. So thank you, dude, for that. And thank you for the parts. And thank you everybody who's commented on some of my mistakes throughout this build. There was a few, and thank you for watching. I hope this was interesting. Man, I'm so happy with this computer. It's going to look cool once I bring it as well to Amiga Ireland, and I might start going to maybe Amiga events and show this thing. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching. I hope this was interesting. See you next time.